In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I wheel through this moon jar, kind of like an elephant jar with an elephant feature on top. So it was a really nice day out today, and I wheel through inside my shed, and I took a small break from wheel throwing while I was waiting for this vase to dry, and I just laid in the leaves. It was super nice and relaxing outside, so it was a great day to throw. I started off by grabbing, I think this is probably around, I'm going to estimate, because I didn't measure it completely, but I'm probably estimating around 4 to 5 pounds of clay. Maybe more like 4 to 3, actually, 3 to 4 pounds of clay. So not too much, it's a small jar. And I started with a very tall cylinder. I got a big wobble at first, but then I pushed it out. So what I did was I pushed in and out, back and forth, and compressing the clay where the wobble was, and it definitely smoothed the clay out, so it was stable again. And then once I had my really tall cylinder, I pushed it down into a moon jar, and I just kept expanding. And of course I added texture to the cylinder before I pushed out, so I couldn't touch the outside of the vase. I could only touch the inside. So once I was happy with the shape, I closed the top of the vase, made it a little bit more narrow, so then it looked more appealing. And then I made a lid too as well. My plan going into this was originally to make an elephant on top of the jar, and so I left a big chunk of clay on the top of the lid, and I used that chunk of clay to sculpt an elephant. Sculpting this elephant didn't take very long. It's just very, very small. So my method for sculpting it was I sculpted it solid, and it stayed solid just because it's so tiny it wasn't going to explode inside the kiln. But I started with the body, and I just added as much clay as I could, but then still roughed out the form of the elephant. And then slowly but surely cut away as much clay as I thought was necessary in order to get the form that I was happy with. I wasn't going for perfection. It's definitely not atomically correct or realistic or in any way. It's just a small little reference of a, kind of like a minimalistic style elephant. The elephant, I do have some concerns. I've talked about this when I was throwing the miniature teapot video. But yeah, so when I'm attaching very small components, such as the legs of the elephant in this case, or like the trunk and the ears, those are going to dry out very fast compared to the moisture level in the body of the jar. And so when I'm letting this vase dry out to bone dry before I fire it for bisque firing, I'm definitely going to have to wrap this in plastic and make sure I keep an eye on this elephant just so it doesn't get completely bone dry, because if it does get completely bone dry before the body of the jar does, or before the jar lid dries out, then it's going to be a problem with cracking and falling apart. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. It's going to be a struggle, but it should work out if I'm cautious about it. So going to the body of the moon jar, basically what I did was I put it onto the banding wheel, and I did not trim it on the wheel just because I didn't want to turn it upside down, and it wasn't heavy to begin with. This was a very light jar because the walls were so thin. I didn't use much clay, and I made a very thin cylinder, so I'm glad that it didn't collapse, but that just makes it very, very light. So then I just had to go and put it on the banding wheel and trim the bottom just a little bit more narrower, so then it was proportionate to the lid of the jar. And this is what it looks like all put together. I had some footsteps of the elephant behind it, and I think that it was a really nice feature on the jar, and I think it looked really cute. It's not a super complex sculpture of the elephant. It's not super atomically correct, but I know that it's going to look pretty cool after it's done glazed. And I love the proportions of this vase, and I had a lot of fun. So I hope this video inspired you in some way. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the vase and the lid in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I'll see you in the next one.